Welcome to The Point, a podcast by Apex Benefits and dedicated to employee benefits thought leadership. You can find more episodes for free on iTunes by searching The Point or Apex Benefits. Please rate, review, and subscribe to be the first to know about what we have in store for you. To learn more about Apex Benefits, please visit our website at www.apexbg.com or find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. Let's get to the point together.
Welcome to The Point, Fort Wayne. I'm Kassee, Lamm, Benefits Strategist with Apex Benefits, and today I'm sitting down with my colleagues Scott Long and Anthony Juliano with the Asscher agency. Good morning, gentlemen. Would you take a moment to introduce yourselves?
Absolutely. Anthony, you first.
Hi, everyone. This is Anthony Juliano. I'm Vice President and General Manager at Asscher Agency. I'm also the founder of .64 Consulting, and I teach college classes at 4 local institutions.
Awesome. Well, this is Scott Long, Executive Advisor with Apex Benefits. I'm just excited to be on the call and on the podcast this morning. And we're doing this remote during the period of COVID, but we're getting pretty darn good at this remote stuff, recording from different places. So, Kassee, it's all yours.
Well, thank you again for joining me this morning. Today we're going to discuss employer branding and perception. And Anthony, you do a lot of corporate training on employer branding and leadership topics. What do you find is the most frequently requested training right now in that space?
Well, it's definitely changed in the past couple months. A couple months ago, we had low unemployment and incredible competition for talent. And everyone was looking for a way to stand out in that competitive environment. And I would say that I was doing as much work in the employer branding space as I was in the marketing space, even though marketing is where I spent the majority of my time in the last 25 years. Right now, I think people are so focused on the day-to-day needs of their business that some of that has been put on pause. But my belief is that once we get to a place where things stabilize a little bit, employer branding will continue to be important, even though the employment environment has changed dramatically over the past couple months, because there are a tremendous number of needs businesses have just to generate as much revenue as they can. And that always starts with having the best talent. It always starts with having the best people in your industry. And that always takes a competitive message and a competitive story.
We got into it a little bit during the intro, but I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about, Anthony, about you, your history, your role at the Asscher agency.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Scott. So I have what I call a blissfully complex professional life. I love what I do, and I say yes to maybe sometimes more than I should, but I love all of it, and all works really well together. I've worked at Asscher for nearly 16 years. As I mentioned, my title is VP and General Manager. I started a small consulting and training business about 10 years ago that complements what I do at Asscher pretty well. That's where I do a lot of training and helping small to mid-sized businesses with marketing needs when it's not a good fit for Asscher. And then I teach. But really what unifies all that work is my desire, my passion for helping people understand our changing communication environment and tell their stories in a way that allows them to reach their goals. And that includes individuals, but certainly I focus on businesses, their stories from a marketing perspective and from an employer branding perspective.
Thanks. Thank you.
So Anthony, the Asscher agency obviously has expertise all across the board. That's why you're so successful. But one of your specialties is within the healthcare and public health space. How have you seen that evolve within the last 10 to 15 years?
Yeah, well, healthcare is an important part of our work, and it's becoming more important as healthcare becomes a larger part of the economy at large. We all know that healthcare has never been more important than it is right now. But even outside of a pandemic situation, healthcare is a critical part of what makes our economy run. So we've put more resources into learning what's happening in the healthcare industry. We've hired some folks who have healthcare backgrounds, healthcare marketing backgrounds, I should say, to give us more expertise in that area. And really what we do in all the industries we serve is we keep pace with what's happening in the industry, learning primarily from our clients, but also learning independent of what our clients can tell us, staffing up in a way that gives us C-suite level expertise in those industries, and then complementing our clients' in-house teams. That's a really important point, that on the healthcare side, we are always going to trust our clients first on knowledge of what's changing in the industry, what's important to their businesses, what's going on with their customers and prospects. But we try to provide an additional level of expertise and also a little bit of objectivity. I worked in healthcare marketing myself for 5 years. And one of the things that became really difficult to do when you're so immersed in one industry is it's easy to overstate what people know and forget what they don't know. So one of the things we bring to the equation as a partner to our clients is a little bit of objectivity to help them remember what their audiences may not know, and tone down the jargon a little bit sometimes. But that work, as I mentioned, is only becoming more important as healthcare grows and becomes a more important part of the economy.
I appreciate that. So I want to dig a little bit more into the idea of perception. And in our business, I guess even if I take a step back and just say, the branding, employer branding plays a big part in perception, right? Whether you're purchasing a service or you're seeking a new job, or the work that we do, we are kind of centered in benefits. We're centered around this idea of talent acquisition, and then ultimately trying to keep everybody that you've got. And we often get into conversations about from hire to retire, and that idea of trying to keep everybody happy with a plethora of benefits, and there's a lot that goes into that. But I'm curious about how the work that you do, Anthony, how that really impacts perception, and kind of how you work with your clients on dealing with perception maybe from a candidate pool standpoint. You mentioned labor rates and so forth. Unemployment rates rather. I'm just curious, somebody that's seeking a job, their perception is really shaped and starts to be impacted the moment they see your job description or the title of the job, whether it's on an external site or on their website. So I'm curious, how the work that you do is impacting those processes for recruiting.
Yeah, well, what's happened, Scott, at least in my experience over the past 25 years, is that employer branding is starting to catch up to branding at large. As I mentioned, the core of my work throughout my career has been in marketing and communication. And people are very well versed today about what branding means in that sense. It's the perception you have of a company based on your experience with that company, the stories that company tells out in the mass media, and what you've heard from other people about that brand. That's what makes up the brand in your mind. And obviously, a brand is only a perception, so my perception of it may be different than someone else's. But what's happened is, as social media has emerged and as the communication environment has changed, there's now this subset called the employer brand. And it is, what do your current employees and prospective employees think about you based on their experience with you, what they've heard from people who work or have worked at your company, and the stories you tell about yourself as an employer. So the way we do that really is similar to what we do on the marketing side. It's both art and science, and that's become more true as digital media has become the dominant force in the media environment. But the art piece is helping clients understand, what is your unique story? How do you differentiate yourself as an employer in this case? How do you tell a story that someone else can't duplicate? What are you going to tell prospects about why they should work for you and not for someone else? And then the science piece of it is really using all the research and the tools and the digital tools at our disposal to make sure that we get the right message in front of the right audience at the right time when they're ready to make a decision. And there's a lot that goes into that. I don't want to oversimplify because it is incredibly complex. But I look at a tool like Glassdoor, right? Glassdoor is where prospective employees are going to find out, what do current and past employees think about working for that company. And I'm amazed at how many employers sort of ignore that or dismiss that when it's really, really critical. I compare it to the star rating on Amazon.com.
Yeah.
This morning, I bought a couple things on Amazon. One of the first things I filtered was star ratings of 4 and above, right? I'm not going to mess with anything that has less than a 4-star rating. Well, increasingly, prospective employees are going to Glassdoor and saying, if you don't have a star rating of 3.5 or higher, I'm just not even going to consider you. So
Right.
we help employers understand the impact of that, and we can debate whether or not it should matter, but it absolutely does. Help them have a sense of urgency about it, and then say, okay, what do you do about that? How do you then craft a message that's authentic to the experience of working for your company, but at the same time is differentiated so you don't sound like everyone else?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think that's really important. And, especially in the Northeast Indiana market where businesses are booming and we've grown leaps and bounds over the last 10, 20 years, it's been really cool to be a part of that and see how businesses are growing and developing. And, as well as I do, being a Fort Wayne resident, it's been cool to be a part of, but there are challenges as you grow and succeed in Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana in general. And as businesses grow and develop, how does marketing and branding contribute to the success of your clients and your potential clients here in Northeast Indiana?
Yeah, I think it's really, and obviously I'm biased because it's the work that I do, but I think it's the most critical thing, because real peer-to-peer sharing is more powerful than it's ever been and will be more powerful tomorrow than it was today. That's why social media matters. The reason social media matters is for the first time, we as human beings have figured out a way to tell our stories to the world and to access the world's stories from anywhere at any time. Up until very recently, we weren't able to do that. Now that we can do that, perception shapes destiny. It's really the only thing that everything else comes back to, is how do people feel about choosing you as an employer, choosing you in terms of products and services. All that drives that is perception. You can influence that in a number of different ways, but one of the big influences is peer-to-peer sharing. And how do you position yourself well in an environment where we now have access to other consumers? We have access to people who have had experience with products and services and employers. So it's really all the work that I do comes back to that whole idea of branding and employer branding and making sure clients are positioned well for this new environment. Another thing I want to mention too, Kassee, is that I'm a transplant myself. I moved to Indiana 24 years ago from the greater Boston area. And I think really Indiana is a little bit reflexive and a little bit too quiet about its story. I grew up in the Boston area, and there's some people who think I'm crazy for moving away from Boston. And please, no disrespect to my friends back home. It's a great place. It's still one of my favorite places to visit. But, I moved here somewhat on a whim in my early 20s. And my attitude then, and it's kind of still my attitude now, is, if it doesn't work out, I can always do something different. But I hope it's worked out, because I've been here for 25, 26 years now. But, when I look at the terms in terms of access to more disposable income, when I look at just time, my commute, my first job out of college in Boston, I had to commute an hour and a half each way. That's 3 hours out of the day just getting to and from work. And that was kind of the nature of the beast. That's just what a lot of people do out there. And now my commute is literally a mile away. I can walk to work in 15 minutes. That's the longest commute I'll have. So I'm gaining back 2.5 hours every day. So there are obviously differences, and it's not for everyone, but I think Indiana and Northeast Indiana specifically should celebrate its story, celebrate those points of difference, accepting that it's not for everyone, but we have some really great things going on, and I think people are starting to realize that.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but how do you suggest businesses and business owners celebrate that success?
Well, it really, Kassee, it comes back to something I think is key with branding overall. It's being really authentic to your story, knowing that it's not for everyone. If you try to be all things to all people in 2020, you're going to end up being nothing to anyone. So what is different about your quality of place? If you're an employer, what's different about working for your company? I look at Asscher Agency as an example. One of the reasons I've been there for 16 years is our founders and our current president have done a tremendous job with giving our employees autonomy. I always say that my number one job is hiring smart people and then stand out of their way until they need me. So we throw people in the deep end. Now we're there with a life jacket if they need it, But generally, we're going to do a good job on hiring and trust people to do the job well. That's not for everyone. There are some people who want more guidance. They want more oversight. And we sort of celebrate the fact that we're agile and that we don't micromanage people. And if you want more oversight over the shoulder, maybe we're not the right employer for you. So I think employers need to be really diligent about figuring out what their story is and then proudly tell that story to the world, knowing that if you are differentiated, if you have a great story to tell, you are going to reach the right people and ultimately be more efficient in your hiring process, because you're not going to get candidates who aren't a good fit for your culture. Or at least you'll get fewer of those candidates, I should say.
So part of your strategy is to not be all things for all people and reaching that specific audience. For entrepreneurs or small business owners that are blossoming here in Northeast Indiana, what would be your words of wisdom to sort of develop that specific audience that they are trying to reach?
Yeah, I think it does take some time, and it takes some really, really deep thought. But it's about being able to provide specific expertise in an industry, in solving a specific problem, and not overstating that. Too many times I see small businesses who want to say yes to every opportunity because they're trying to pay the bills, and that's understandable. But then they say yes to too many things that are outside their wheelhouse, and that means they have to say no to great opportunities that come up as they're growing and as they're managing limited resources. So I think you really have to be disciplined about understanding what are the specific places you're best equipped to help. Too many times I've seen entrepreneurs, small businesses that grow and they sort of morph into something different than where they started, which can be okay. But if you do that too fast, if you get away from those core competencies, that's where a lot of trouble can come in. So I think it's really being confident that if you have a good story to tell, and if you are excellent at the services you provide, you might have to be patient, but if you focus on that, that's probably where you're going to have the most success.
Well, Anthony, thank you so much for carving out some time for us today on the point. We really appreciate you devoting the time and your perspective.
Well, I appreciate it. It's always great to talk about this stuff. I think that as we go through the pace of modern day life in today's working world, a lot of the stuff kind of gets brushed under the carpet. It becomes the thing we'll get to when we get around to it. And even today when we maybe have a little bit more discretionary time, I don't know a lot of people who have a ton of extra time. So it's good to focus on it and give people the opportunity to think about it as the high priority that it should be as leaders and as people who are trying to make businesses thrive.
Yeah.
Completely agree with you, Anthony. Thanks so much for your time this morning, and I'm looking forward to passing you on some of the trails this summer here in Fort Wayne.
Yeah, that's another great thing we have here in Northeast Indiana. I wouldn't be doing my job as Fort Wayne Trails board chair if I didn't give a shout out to our great trail system. It's one of the things that's kept me sane during the self-quarantine, is being able to go out for a walk and get some trail time in. So, those kind of community amenities too are something that employers need to celebrate. They need to look at what are some of the assets that are adjacent to them that might make their place of employment more attractive. We at Asscher, our office is in downtown Fort Wayne. When I started, that really wasn't much of a calling card when I started working at Asscher 16 years ago. But now there are employees who say that one of the reasons they want to work for us is because we are centrally located, and because they can walk down the street and have a number of choices in where to go to lunch, or they can go to a park, go to Promenade Park right down the street. So that's been a great place to be, and those community assets are really something that help employers stand out as well.
No question. It's all around us. So, well, thanks so much, Anthony. Really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you both. I appreciate it. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit of my story.
You can find more episodes for free on iTunes by searching The Point or Apex Benefits. Please rate, review, and subscribe to be the first to know about what we have in store for you. To learn more about Apex benefits, please visit our website at www.apexbg.com or find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. Let's get to the point together.